Christ, at that point, had this parable. And in this parable, he said, if your hand leads you to sin, cut it off. It's better for you to enter life crippling than be thrown with both hands in hell. So, a lot of religious cults concluded that you need to cut off limbs or pull out your eye to be saved. That is not what Christ was talking about. Look, your limbs are part of your body. You need them to function. And see it like this. When you were not born again, you were part of the world. So you needed to have worldly comfort for you to function, or else you would become nuts. But the moment you become born again, those worldly comforts often become liabilities onto you. And to get rid or cut off some of those liabilities, it will feel like cutting off a limb. Because you'll go through tribulation, you'll go through trouble. So it will be difficult in the beginning to do without the worldly comforts. But here's the thing. You can better endure the short-term suffering that frees you from those liabilities than to remain those liabilities and be choked and become unfruitful in your walk by faith. That is what Christ meant with cutting off your hand or pulling out your eye if it leads you to sin. Now, what is sin? Sin is operating in a way that excludes trust in God. That's all that sin is. Sin is really a cycle in which you seek relief from challenges. And only reason you seek relief from those challenges is because you're not walking by faith, you're not walking God's strength. So the only thing that you're left with is seeking relief from challenges, which will lead to a downward cycle of self-destruction. Now that's what sin is. So when you are born again, you're not a sinner anymore, you are righteous, you're born again. But you need to get sin out of your thinking. You need to get the world's ways out of your mind. Because the world will keep you in sin. The world will not keep you in sinning, but will keep you in sin. It will keep you in this cycle of relief seeking. That is what the world will keep you in. The world will keep you in self-destructive cycles. Now, to be freed from those self-destructive cycles, you will face conflict with worldly people. For example, if you are from the hood, or let's say the ghetto, and you want to be free from the ghetto, it may imply that you may have to separate yourself from some relatives or some friends. Because the moment you begin to talk about financial assets, and you begin to make a little bit of money, the people from the ghetto may turn on you. They'll sabotage you, and if they can't sabotage you, they'll kill you. So it's either you take the step to be delivered from those people, and you go through some difficulty because now you need to reconnect, now you need to connect with other people. Now you need to, not reinvent, but now you need to examine your self-image, how you see yourself. You have to go through all of this. But it's better for you to go through all that difficulty than to be stuck with people that want to keep you in poverty. I hope you get what I'm saying here. So in this video, I want to talk about being freed from spiritual liabilities. Because as a believer, that is the number one battle we face. And that battle is that the world wants you in this cycle of sin. That is what the world wants. And I mentioned before what sin is. Sin is when you function without relying on Christ. Because the word says everything that's not done out of faith is sin. Why is it sin? Because it lacks the power of God. It lacks the security of God. It lacks the safety that comes from God. So if it lacks security, it lacks safety, that means you are in danger. It means that you are vulnerable for exploitation as well as all types of spiritual, mental, physical, sexual, and all types of abuse. So for you not to walk by faith, that means that you don't walk in the security and safety of Christ. And for you not to walk by faith implies that you are in a cycle of relief seeking, or also called a cycle of sin. And that's what the world wants to keep you in. 95% of all the battles that the believer will face are battles in which the world wants to trap them back in a cycle of sin. And now, how does the world keep you in a cycle of sin if you are born again and your mind is on Christ? The world can achieve this when you have investments in worldly things that you don't see are worldly. Well, I'm saying like this. If you have investments in the world's way of thinking, then you have liabilities. And as long as you have liabilities, the world has a grip on you. And when the world has a grip on you, evil spirits have access to you. And when evil spirits have access to you, they have something to hinder you in doing God's will. And God's will is for you to operate in life and abundance that includes safety and security in the here and now. That's God's will for you. Anything that hinders you in doing that, walking in life and abundance with real safety and real security in the here and now, everything that hinders you in doing that is a liability. And the world needs you to have liabilities for them to have a hold on you. So it is very important for the believer to be renewed in their mind so that they don't have any liabilities. When you talk to a financial advisor, or you talk to someone that studied economics, or a professional or successful businessman, they will tell you that the number one reason why so many people remain in a cycle of poverty is because of, first, their way of thinking, and secondly, because of their bad way of thinking, they hold on to liabilities. And in the financial world, a liability is something that costs you money. And an asset, something that brings in money. But I'm not talking about the financial world here. But the financial world of this world is pagan and is based on the paranormal, which is spiritual. So finances are spiritual. So if in the spiritual you are in abundance, automatically it will work out in your material reality around you. But if in the spirit world you are in poverty, then this poverty will work out in your earthly circumstances. That's how it is. That's why it's very important to be delivered from spiritual liabilities. So, what is an example of a spiritual liability? I'm glad you asked this. One way many believers remain stuck is because they have this urge to be validated, or as the world calls it, to be respected. To be honored means that people hold you in high esteem and they entrust themselves onto you. That's why you have more leverage. You can have leverage without people's consent, and that's possible. There's nothing wrong with that. But when you're honored, people acknowledge your leverage and they give room to your leverage. When people give room to your leverage, that means that they get along with your leverage. When people resist your leverage, you will encounter violence and persecution. Let me give an example. Let's say you are an investor in the stock market and you earn a lot of money because of it. And now you want to use that money to invest in local projects. Because you invest in those local projects, you gain both economic as well as political relevance. And because of this, you have more to say in the lives of other people, in the affairs of other people, because we know that people don't have private lives. That's a hoax. So you invest in the local communities, so you have more to say in the circumstances of other people. And those other people will experience your impact. If they get along with your impact, they are honoring you. They get along with it and they work together with you. Even though they don't know you personally, they work with you. So if you come up with projects, they'll contribute to your projects and they'll use those projects for the well-being of those around them. In this case, they honor your leverage. If people resist your leverage, they will make reports against you, they will break down your businesses, they will attack your staff, then you have persecution. So to honor someone means that you get along with their leverage, and because of that, they can increase in their leverage. That's what it means to honor someone. To be respected simply means that people acknowledge you because they have no other choice. Because if they decide not to acknowledge you or not to validate you, something bad will happen to them. So there is a bad consequence you want to avoid, and therefore out of necessity, to reduce the chance of harm, they give you acknowledgement. That's what respect is. And worldly people have this urge to be validated. And they even become violent when they're not validated. That's what parents do with children. That's what employers do with their employees. That's what's going on all around the world. People want to be validated, and if you don't give them validation the way they want, they turn on you. And they don't want to take responsibility for their defective way of thinking. This thinking about respect, it's not biblical, it's even against nature. You need to unlearn it. Because you'll be triggered and you'll become upset with people, and because of that you'll get into a lot of troubles, conflicts, and fistfights that you didn't have to be involved in. Why? Because you expect others to validate you and to make you feel good. You must unlearn this diabolical way of thinking. Yes, it's diabolical. That way of thinking is a liability, because now you will only want to be around people that validate you. Well, those people that validate you only want you around because you validate them. So you're actually just using one another. You're not really investing in one another, nor are you serving one another. So it's a diabolical way of thinking that goes against Christ and even goes against your nature as a human being. You need to unlearn this concept of respect. And many people are trapped in dangerous relationships because they believe in a thing called respect. If you have parents who are out of their mind and they are harming you, they shouldn't receive any honor from you. They want you to validate them at all costs. That's what respect is. They shouldn't get it. You should be freed from those people. And if you're an adult, you should lower or if necessary break contact with them. But those that believe in respect will keep allowing their parents to have access to them at their own expense. And when they have children, they expect that they have the right to dump their frustration on their children, and the children have to put up with it. And that's how the cycle of narcissistic abuse goes on from generation to generation. So this whole thinking of respect is a liability that most people can't see it for what it is. So this respect thinking, unlearn it. Let me go to another liability. And that is that people don't want to face difficulty. Now, I'm not telling you to jump into difficulty. Absolutely not. I'm not telling you to make difficulty. I'm telling you to just learn to acknowledge that difficulties exist and that you need to deal with them in a constructive way. If you deal with difficulties in a constructive manner, you'll overcome the difficulties, and difficulties will not harm you. You get what I'm saying? You will harm the difficulty, but the difficulty will not harm you. But that's only possible when you have a constructive way of thinking. But most people just want to flee from difficulty. They don't want to be bothered. They just want to be relieved. So they have this narcissistic attitude that they want things to work out, but they don't want to go through anything, and they don't want to be responsible. You see this with issues with the youth. You have children who grew up in broken homes, and the community does not intervene. But yet that same community becomes upset when those children malfunction. Those children have no option but to malfunction because they come from a malfunctioning background. So it's unreasonable and even unrealistic and even pathetic that the community expects those children to heal themselves while they are in an environment that enables harm. How can someone be in an environment that enables harm, yet they're being healed? That can only happen if the power of God is there, but the community doesn't even want the power of God. So they generate this toxic environment that victimizes people, and now the people that are victimized by it are also responsible for how they were treated by the same community, and that same community that makes things hard on them also expects them to make them feel good. I mean, what the heck is that? That is because people of that community want to avoid difficulty. They don't want to face things. They don't want to deal with stuff. But they do demand to be validated. So that thinking of fleeing from difficulty, it is a liability. Now don't get me wrong. If you're in a supermarket, someone enters in with a big gun and they're about to shoot, you get out of there. Or if you have people that are looking for a fight, they just want to escalate and unload their violence, you just de-escalate by walking away. So I'm not saying that after difficulty comes by, you need to jump into and deal with it. No, I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying that this attitude that you don't want to deal with any difficulty whatsoever, that you just want relief at all costs, that is a liability and an open door to demons. You need to let this go. Then another liability. This is an easy one. toxic relationships. A toxic relationship is a relationship with an individual that's not interested in solutions. Yes, a toxic relationship implies that you're involved with someone who just wants the easy way out without ever having to face their own expectations. Toxic people are people who don't want to self-reflect. When they're upset or when they're uncomfortable, they just want a way out. And the only reason they remain with you is because you contribute to their relief. The moment you don't contribute to their relief anymore, they become upset, they become angry, or they begin to assault you, attack you, or they just flat out ignore you. And then you're left behind thinking, what did I do wrong? They have a negative effect on you. That's what I mean with a toxic relationship. Toxic relationships are liabilities because they drain you of your mental strength as well as your emotional strength, which both should be used to glorify Christ. And because of this, they keep you in emotional injury, in emotional pain, and this hinders you to think clearly. So they hijack your soul, which prevents you from walking in life in abundance. And because they do this, they're assisting demons in keeping you trapped. So toxic relationships have to go. Now, just because someone has issues doesn't mean someone is toxic. Someone can have many issues and still be safe to be involved with. What makes someone toxic is when they refuse to look for solutions. Just because someone has issues doesn't mean that they are toxic. You have people with few issues and they're very dangerous to be involved with because they carry danger with them and they endanger you. So toxic relationships, or simply said, toxic people, need to be out of your environment. Very important. Another thing that is liability that many believers don't see. And I've spoken about this quite often. That is that believers still have this worldly thinking that they expect everything to start off good. It can be that you're looking for another house because the place you stay now is going to be torn down very soon. It's going to be demolished, So you need to find a new place to rent. You're looking and looking, but you just don't find a place. And you become a bit upset thinking, oh dear, next month I need to be out and still don't have a place. And you think, why is this going on? A week before you had to get out of that house or out of that place, you get an invitation to look into a place. And before you know it, you're in another house. Now, you went through this difficulty that lasted very briefly of finding another place. It didn't happen that you just went online, looked for a place, found one, paid the new rent, and moved out. It didn't happen that smoothly. But it didn't have to happen as smoothly. It didn't. It worked out. But believers, just like worldly people, they often have this expectation, which is quite narcissistic. They're not narcissists, but they have this narcissistic expectation that everything needs to start off good. And when you expect everything to start off good, you will fall for Satan's traps. That is how many women fall for narcissistic psychopaths that end up abusing them or even killing them. That's how a lot of men and involved with scam artists will promise them good business opportunities. That's how a lot of students, after graduating, end up in jobs that drain them and even take away their physical health. Do you understand this? And there's another liability. This one is not that obvious it's a liability, and that is when people expect everything to be difficult. They expect that they need to work hard. This work hard mentality is a slave mentality that will destroy you. If you expect things to be difficult for them to be real, then Satan will send something difficult to you to trap you and drain you. Because you think things have to be difficult for them to be real. So Satan sends something difficult to you, and because you invest a lot in that difficult thing, you think it's real, but it's really a scam. And because you're so invested in that difficult thing, it's very hard for you to acknowledge that you've been scammed. But if you're someone who just wants things to be easy all the time, then Satan will send something easy for you. So Satan is practical. He adapts to your expectations. I'm talking about your wrong expectations. Sometimes Satan will use your good expectations to trick you also if you're not looking at the bigger picture. In any case, Satan is practical. So stop expecting everything to start off good, but stop expecting everything real to be difficult. Stop doing that. Not everything that's real is difficult. Some things may be difficult, but not everything that's good and real is difficult. But a lot of people, because of this work hard mentality, which is a trash mentality of the world, they are stuck in this cynical pattern in which they never see good things coming their way. Because their own mindset cancels out good things from arriving to them. Sometimes it's not demons that you're fighting. Sometimes it's just the consequences of your own wrong way of thinking that's haunting you. So you need to get rid of those wrong ways of thinking by replacing them with the right attitudes, with the right ways of thinking. You only get rid of wrong thinking by replacing them with the right thinking. So you have to replace spiritual liabilities with spiritual assets. That means mindsets that are in line with Christ, that enable and promote life and abundance in the here and now. So any religion. So first of all, you shouldn't even be involved in religion as a believer, because religion is something worldly. But let me just say it because some people need to hear this. Any religion or any spiritual group that teaches you that you have to allow yourself to be raped, scammed, abused, or even murdered during this lifetime to keep others at ease because you're going to have it anyway, that's a group or religion you don't need. Because they're telling you that you're not worth anything and that you're not valuable enough to live a good life now. And they're also telling you that Christ is useless for you in the here and now, and they are legitimizing Satan. Satan is never legitimized by Scripture nor by Christ. But you have people that legitimize darkness. They will keep mentioning stuff that are practical or that are factual, but don't give you the context. For example, someone tells you, well, in life you need to pay bills or else you're homeless. Okay, if you're born in a middle-class family or you're born in a working-class family, then you have no choice but to pay rent and pay bills. As long as you're in the situation that's necessary. The moment you begin to walk in life in abundance, you will still have a job, you will still be paying bills, but eventually you'll be freed from this yoke of slavery because you'll have assets. So what people should tell you is, as long as you are not on the level of life in of abundance or operating life in abundance, you're stuck in this cycle of paying bills. That's what they ought to tell you, because then they point out to you that there is a way out. But the moment they only tell you, well, you need to pay bills, or else they are legitimizing darkness. They are legitimizing bondage. So people or groups that legitimize darkness are people and groups you need to lose. You are far better off without them. Sometimes you're not aware something's a liability until you lose it. Some of you are listening to this. You have liabilities that you're carrying around with you. When you lose those liabilities, very soon, because I decree and declare in Christ Jesus' mighty name that everyone that listens to this will lose the liabilities in their lives. The moment you lose those liabilities, whatever it or they are, you'll see a big difference in the weeks and months to come. You'll see a big difference. Because when you have a liability, most of the time you are not aware that it's a liability. Others will notice it's a liability. You are the last one often to notice it. But when you lose a liability, often you're not aware of the benefits that are coming your way. You're not aware that you've been delivered. Others will notice it. That is why when you lose liabilities, often people that notice it will attack you because they don't want you to be free. And evil spirits will use such people to bring you back into some other type of liability. So, again, just because something is easy or difficult doesn't mean it's a liability. Just because someone has issues doesn't mean someone is toxic. Look at the bigger picture. You can have a spouse that has many issues from his past, but that spouse is there for you and that spouse has your back. And that spouse is dedicated to look for help when he realizes that he's wrong. That is not a liability, that's an asset that requires investment. If you have a spouse with almost no issues, but they never want to examine themselves, and they always hold on to how they think, that's someone with a narcissistic attitude that will likely turn into a reprobate because you can't tell them anything. That's a liability you need to be freed from. So always look at the context, not at your feelings, not at how you think about stuff. Look at the context. When the context is right, you can judge where the content belongs there. Don't just look at the content. Look at the context. The context and the content must be in harmony with one another. So always examine the context, because then you're far better off examining the content. Okay? Well, that's it for now. Keep agreeing with Christ and be at peace.